Today's Thursday, May the 29th. We're going to commence the class right now. We just went over some of the examples of student projects with the user personas and all the other deliverables that we're working on, and things that we're going to be, embarking in the next few classes, and things we're going to be covering not only today but next week. So I'm going to record this session as you see right now, and let's get started. So if you can see it there, perfect. The mic's on. Excellent. So again, watch the video from last week with the two gentlemen that transitioned from graphic designers to UX designers. It's under class number 3. I strongly encourage you to watch the video if you haven't, so do that. There's some takeaway points that I captured into today's lesson, class number 4, and I went over that earlier as well. If you download this little zip file, I screen captured the deliverables that you should have as a UX candidate or a graphic designer trying to have a UX portfolio. Okay, so those are some of the key bullet points that's still valid today. I know the video is a little older, but those things are still important. Like user personas, the assignment you're doing now, wireframes, low fidelity, high fidelity prototypes, UI kits. These are all things that you're going to do in this class. And finally, you're going to have your own app that you're going to make. Okay, your very own functioning app on a phone, and that can be your big, like, hey, look what I did kind of thing. And then you have websites you're doing in the other class. You can do a website prototype as well. That's also something that people do. They do a web and a mobile version. So that was that one, the screen capture there. This is the UX structure. So I'm going to continue with the slides as we're going to cover the 5 planes of UX by Jesse James Garrett, which is the UX course compacted into this one that we have. So I'm going to just do a full screen here and deal with the structure in depth. As you see, there's the 5 planes of UX. So we're in the middle now. We started with the strategy. We talked about how strategy is important for businesses, stakeholders, to design the product. Like, what's the strategy? What's the end game? Obviously, we want profit. We want the users to be happy. And these are the key ingredients that have to happen. Then there's the scope, right? The scope we addressed last week. How long will it take? What's the timeline? What's it going to achieve? Okay, the big milestones. These are the kind of things that we covered. Today is a structure. So what structure deals with, it's defining structure is basically your position. So structure defines how users get to a given screen and where they can go from there when they're done, basically, right? Structure also defines categories of information. Structure, okay, is created by interaction design. This is when we start getting into like XD and Figma in the upcoming few weeks. First, we do XD, of course, and we're going to start doing some interaction design. Have you done any interaction design before? The answer should be yes. You did websites. You did last semester, you made a website. What made the website interactive? The band website. Remember that one? And the merch website? The buttons, right? The buttons made the website interactive. You interact with your computer right now, with your phone. That's all called interaction. So this is what structure defines, the interaction and how it works. Because without interaction, the stuff's not going to be working, right? So the product has to work with the proper integrated interaction. A structure is created by interaction design, which presents information in a way people can interact with. Sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's audio, sometimes it's virtual reality, like VR. If you guys have the VR headsets before, there's different ways of creating interaction. Structure is also created by information architecture. So not AI, but IA stands for information architecture, organization, labeling, search, and navigation systems. Good structure organizes information in a way that provides intuitive access to content. I'm working on a project right now. It's like a website for Shopify. One of my clients decided to do e-commerce stuff. It's a dental supply company, and we're trying to structure it in a way that I thought it'd be more simpler. It's pretty complex in terms of the breakdown of categories, because there's, let's say, let's say you're selling almost anything like clothing, there's shoes and t-shirts and hats, and different categories have to be organized, whether it's alphabetically, whether it's categorically, any way you want to sell something, you have to organize it. You have to give it structure. Without structure, you can't have a successful product, whether it's an app or a website. Good structure organizes information in a way that provides intuitive access to content. Intuitive means people don't want to think. They just want to go click, click, buy, purchase. Again, I'll use Amazon as an example because we all know how to go through Amazon and order something. The structure should be appropriate. So this is more like on the complex scale, the simple scale, right? This is the linear narrative and the non-linear hyperlinks, right? So this one is flexible but possibly confusing. This one is predictable and it's easy to execute. And this is in the middle. What I'm doing right now with you guys, I'm doing this because I'm going next. Look, I can go back and forward. So I'm doing the linear storytelling. The most classic, the most simplest way to do a PowerPoint presentation. You go next. When you create something more like this, now it's more interactive, like a website. You did this last semester with the band website. You probably had 4 pages, but that was your way of home, about, home, next. This was the home page, and those were the other pages. Then you get into the mobile devices, then we have more like this kind of structure, more complex, the bento box, right? Then you can go from anywhere and anywhere based on what your purpose is, right? So this is why you have to know what structure you're implementing in your product and what exactly are you designing. Structure should be flexible. It should also accommodate future change. This is a floor plan of a very complex, blueprint of some kind. It'll be very difficult once it's done, like this structure here, to move this. You can't move the staircase over here. This won't happen. You can probably break the wall down and maybe build another wall here. You can do minor structure additions or changes, but you can't do major structure changes. It'll be very hard. It's going to compromise, the foundation, the architecture, and everything like that. So you have to be flexible in a certain way. This is a plan for like a website example, and this is like the deadline is, let's say March was the plan to get this done. April, and you got June. I guess they skipped May, and you got September, right? So this is how you can kind of plan things as you move along the phase. You always add stuff. It's like a tree directory. You add stuff as you go along. I like this one. It's called dancing in step. Okay. So you kind of go with the flow and you have to be kind of in the rhythm of doing things properly. More about dancing in step. Interaction design defines the structure and behavior of interactive systems. It increases, so it creates meaningful relationships between people and the things they use. It effectively communicates interactivity and functionality. It reveals simple and complex workflows. Because how are you going to explain this to someone? You can't just with dialogue. I can't just talk to you about it or tell you about it. You have to show them a diagram and you have to explain it properly for them to visualize what exactly your intentions are of creating this product. This is why you have to create the workflow. You have to create the plan. There's no other way of communicating this information. This is why the structure is the most important integral part. It reveals simple and complex workflows. That's what I just said. It informs users about state changes. So when something's being done, change, it's documented. Documented is another important key factor. Because guess what? In my line of work, if in this line of work, I mentioned packaging earlier, but distortions in packaging. When you do $1 million job for Coca-Cola, they sign off on that. If they don't sign the signature, the job doesn't go in the production plant. Because if that job goes in the production plant and they find something wrong with the file, you can say, no, you already signed off on it. You proofed it. If there's no signature, no liability. That's how it is. It's a legal tender. So these are the things you have to be very vigilant and kind of like on point with this stuff. It informs users about state changes. When done right, it prevents user error. These are the more important things about using structure in an appropriate way. It makes it consistent. Consistency is a big thing. Predictability, learnable, visible, and feedback. Okay, those are the 5 main takeaways out of all the other points that you see. Here's a website of a consistent website, I guess. Most modern websites these days, as you know, they're very consistent or fixed. From WordPress, Shopify, I mentioned earlier, a lot of the content management system deliverables out there, they're all designed like a template website, and they're all consistent. The menu's always here, the search, the little sub menu, everything's kind of consistent. The only thing that changes is this information here. This is how things were kind of done from, I guess, the original days to now. And you just change that content there. This is a UI kit, something that you'll do with your next assignment. And since I'm going to introduce to you XD and you're going to hand this thing to me next week, you can start the next project. You can use Illustrator or XD to make a UI kit. And the UI kit will be used for a website or a mobile app. I think more like we're leaning towards mobile. So this is something that you're going to create. And that, of course, is consistent. If you type in Apple OS UI kit, you'll see a very, I don't know if you have an Apple product or an Android product, but they all look quite different from one another, but they're all very consistent in their own way. So if you look at a Windows operating system or a Mac OS operating system, they're very nicely designed, but they're very consistent to their own color scheme, right? Their own start menu, all the operating systems, everything's done with the UI kit, whether it's an operating system or a website or an app. Information experience design is consistent. So behavior, voice, this is like transitions, rollovers, tooltips, should be behave consistently, leverage the visitor's prior experience here and elsewhere. This is where you start getting to tutorials, okay? How many times you've played like a game on your phone, and if it's one of those complex games, they all have tutorials. They all tell you what to do before you start playing the game. You say you got to swipe here, you have to click here, and you have to collect here, collect your gems, get more money, or whatever the game instructs you to do, and then you learn it, and then you actually apply these things. And the next time you play the game, you don't have to think. You just intuitively know what you're doing, right? That's what makes the games very successful. It's also a billion-dollar industry, right? So these are the tips that they use professionals to make these games addicting and profitable at the same time. So behavior, okay? Voice, labels, and terms should be used the same throughout the experience. Content and imagery should have a stable, consistent style. Consistency, if you notice, it's a word I'm going to recite over and over again because it's very important. Design patterns. Okay, again, that's Windows right there. Android or Windows OS. Reusable solution to recurring problems. Content may change, but interaction and process stay the same. Makes actions and result consistent and predictable. Discoverability shouldn't involve luck or chance. I think Nike had a website a while back. They use this as an example. The users were getting frustrated. And I'm sure you've seen websites before. You go there, you're like, what do I do now? Like it's like a maze. It's like, where do I click? Because they made it so intuitive and interactive that you have to literally hover the mouse to the top of the screen for the menu to come down. Like, right? Now, maybe we can figure that out by chance. Let's try this, let's try that. But can you imagine an older person, an older generation that's not that technologically kind of savvy? They'll have a hard time figuring it out, right? Now, Nike maybe cares or doesn't care about that kind of demographic, but they should because it's Nike, right? So they had a same mistake. They corrected it right away. They made the menu more apparent and people can access the website more easier, right? People should be able to tell that an opportunity to interact is available. It shouldn't be like a hunting game, okay? We're not playing a game here to find a menu, click and buy something. Use content hinting. Avoid false bottoms. When more content and interactivity exists below the visible space. So again, if you watch that video from last week, Ryan, the other gentleman, talks about the fold line. This folds, but the fold line is below the fold means, see here, this is below the fold. As soon as you scroll down, it's the next fold. So when you hear the word fold, it's the next page. So if you want to sell something or make a menu on the product or the app, it's got to be in the same fold line. People shouldn't have to scroll to look for a menu. You understand? Pretty basic stuff, right? Or common sense stuff, I should say. Click and tap. Those are hints. Hints are used in most apps. And again, I'll mention games because they're a big part of the learning stuff. And you should always hint points because how will people know to click where they're supposed to click? So hinting is a big thing. Click and tap. People will attempt to interact with anything that might possibly be clickable. If it looks like a button, it must be a button, right? Standard user interface components are understood by the interactive, understood to be interactive. Use them. Different text color, 3D icons, all invite interaction. I remember even back in the earlier days when 3D was a thing, everyone made the buttons look like 3D, right? Like it's got the bevel and emboss and chisel, right? Pops right out at you, right? Or a drop shadow. The drop shadow really elevates the text coming out, like another dimension on top of the background design. These are all tricks that you know how to do. Photoshop or Illustrator, it does elevate that element closer, right? So drop shadows, bevel and emboss effects always pop things up a bit. Use it with buttons. Touch and gesture. There's no hover state for touchscreens. You guys know what rollovers are? Are you doing rollovers now with Felice in your HTML, CSS? So on websites, you hover and the color changes of the button. Although you can do that in an app, it doesn't make sense. There's no hover state. Look, this is a mouse. That's a hover state. See, look, that hovers right there. See, hover state right there. It changes blue when I hover it. That's only present on a desktop environment, a computer with a mouse. If it's a touch screen, right, you disable that feature, or there's no need for you to do hover. All you do is you click tap. So it's a click state, not a hover state. These are states. We're going to talk about states later. You're going to learn how to do behavior states in Figma and XD in a lot of our exercises in class. Consider the lefties of the world by making interfaces reversible. How many of you are left-handed? Really? Not one per? I always get one or two. Don't be shy now. Come on. Were you forced to be right-handed? In some cultures, they force you to be right-handed. Like, you can't write with your left. But they do, right? They thought you're like, from the dark side or something like that, right? That's what some cultures think that. So the thing is, with the left-handed people, I don't like sitting with them in a wedding because then you're elbowing each other, You can't, you're eating with the same utensils in a tight space. It doesn't work quite well. I'm kidding. Forget the wedding. But think about the people with the left hand. Their thumb now that has to go across to click on the hamburger menu on the opposite side. They're not used to using their hand. They got to use this hand. So you got to be able to consider all these different possibilities. Some apps or in advanced interactive products have a preference. You can pick left-handed or right-handed. I don't know if you guys played Nintendo Wii or other interactive stuff. You can pick left-handed or right-handed. It's a thing. You have to make sure you make you cater to every audience, okay? Especially when you have a distraction on the screen. Don't make people reach over the interface and obstruct their view because it's not going to be helpful. Interaction should be easy to learn and easy to remember. Ideally, people use it once, learn it rapidly, remember it forever. In reality, they use it a few times, learn it, and hope they remember it the next time. So as we can see on the interface, I'm sure if you open your phone right now, there's a little thinking you have to do in order for you to do anything on your phone, right? You know what to do. You click, tap, tap, right? So you do it a few times, it becomes kind of like a second nature. How many of you recently got a new phone in the past year? So how was that? Like when you got the new phone, you have to kind of learn it all over again, right? You have to like, I try to like make my old phone look like my new phone, kind of arrange my interfaces different. I don't like cloning my stuff because I like to have new things. So I do want to clean it up and start all over. It's a nice little thing, but it was like a learning curve. I had to remember, oh, my icons are different now than the previous icons out of my old phone. So yeah, it's something you have to adjust to. Interaction should be easy to remember. Well, this is the same thing here. Icons. It's Friday afternoon, play music for. So these are icons that, if you look at these icons, do you know what they are? No, right? But I'll bet you if you use these icons a few times, you'll remember them next time. Your brain will register and remember what the icon does. That's why they say use universal symbols. We all know what a trash can looks like. It means delete something. How many apps and websites use the little trash can icon to delete the item? Everyone uses it because it's universal, right? And Windows uses a recycling bin. Apple uses a trash can. Is Windows more green than Apple? Why are they using a recycling bin? Because they went to court 30 years ago and one was accusing the other one of stealing their idea. They said, no, I'm not. I'm using a recycling bin. I'm not using a trash can. Believe it or not, that was an argument in court. It's a different UI. If you notice the Windows, the X is on the left. Apple has the X on the right of the window to close the window, right? Two different locations, different icons. And Steve Gates and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates went to court over this and didn't really go anywhere, but I'm sure they got paid out, right? So the icons are universal. These are unique icons. You can use these, but people have to remember them. Intuitive really means single trial learning. Here's the gestures and arbitrary moves. Okay, you ready for these? See how many of these you know. We all know the tap, double tap, touch and hold, horizontal scroll, vertical scroll, double tap, two double taps, the finger flick, right? Like right now with my 3 fingers, I can change my desktop like this. But with my 2 fingers, it doesn't work. The touchpad recognizes the 3 fingers versus the 2 fingers to interact with your environment. I like how Apple, I can go like this, I can go scroll up and choose different desktops. I can do that very easily. Then I can swipe different desktop to another desktop like that. It's a nice way for me to multifunction quickly across multiple screens. That's kind of neat, actually. Because before I used to have like 2, 3 monitors. I still have 2 monitors at home when I do some heavy or multiple tasking. But I like the fact that I can switch screens like that. How many of you use this feature with your PC? You can use it on the. Can you do it on Windows too? Yeah, you can, right? How's it with Windows? 3 finger swipe upwards, and then can you just swipe like this? Because at home I have a Windows PC, I have a hard station. I don't have a laptop. I give it away. So that's the one. So it's a nice way to incorporate these interactive gestures with everyday use or things like that. There's so there's pinch in, pinch out. We all know, even people even don't know how to use, like, the older generation again. They learn. They know if you squeeze the fingers, you're zooming in or you're zooming out. It became like a natural action or behavior that we remember forever. Doesn't matter what phone you use, what app, tablet, if it's a touch screen, we know how to interact with it. These are the main interactive principles that we cater to. Ask yourself something. Did you do this 10 years, 15 years ago? Did you even know about this stuff? Because this was not around, right? Now that it's around, we have to accustom to all these things. They become universal symbols. All right, here's the predictable approach. Can users answer? Where am I? How did I get here? What can I do here? Where can I go from here? You're provided a strong sense of place. You've set a correct expectations. You've made it possible for people to accurately predict the outcomes of their interaction. That means if they answer yes, of course. So these are very important things you have to mentally prepare and embed in your design for this to be true. Because if you can't answer these questions, if you look at your product or design or interface, it's not right. You have to make sure all these things are answered. People have to know these questions like instantly, right? You shouldn't have to think about it. Previews can be used to set user expectations for new or complex interactions. Show what can be done while the interface loads. Show a high-level view of structure to provide context, much like a map. This is another example of a tutorial that's an overlay on top of an interface. Then let's say use like a 50% black screen with the white chalkboard type of illustrative instructions. So that was a cool way to present that. Other examples, labels, instructions, icons, images, set expectations, what to do, touch here, what will happen, open this, drag this over there, where the user will go, foster a sense of place, how the screen will respond, do X and Y will happen. So another way to inform these predictions. Feedback. People don't think about this, but feedback is also very important. When you think about feedback, you're thinking, what feedback? How do I do my assignment feedback? No. What happens when you interact with the computer feedback? Have you had that panic attack when your computer black screen, nothing happens? Like not turning on, and then 10 seconds later, you see a little loading bar installing software. That means your computer is doing like a main reset or something, a main, what's it called, a system upgrade. And that lasts like 20 minutes. That's why I don't buy Windows anymore. Mac does it too, actually. They're both at fault for this. Can you imagine this bar never existed? How would you know what's happening? Where's your feedback, right? How do you know the computer is not installing a file or a virus in your computer? Same as when you're sending an email, watching a movie, downloading something. We're just gonna wait, right? You gotta have a visual cue of what's happening. This is the feedback factor. As a UX designer, you have to prepare this to work. And I'm sure you've seen it, right? So this is how many seconds? So time, how long will it take? People are impatient. 27 seconds. Okay, good. It's never really 27 seconds, but it tells you it's 27 seconds. It also shows you how far the file is downloading. So these are visual cues that create feedback, and you can predict what's going to happen. So location again, status, future state, outcome, results. All right. Every action should produce a visible, understandable, and immediate reaction. And acknowledge interactions to let people know they have been heard, felt, or seen. So people want to know that, hey, I'm good. It's a sense of security. Failing to acknowledge an interaction can lead to unnecessarily repetition of actions and errors or mistakes. I love this next one. Ready? This happened to me. The Sony Play Store. I think I purchased a Sony product with PayPal, and I clicked buy. Nothing happened. So guess what I did? I clicked it again. Guess what happened? I bought it twice. So I have to call PayPal and say I made two purchases. Like it didn't tell me thank you, close the window, right? It was very slow. Could be the system, but you know, if you imagine I clicked it 10 times, you purchase something 10 times. Like that never happens on Amazon, right? It always clicks and says thank you for your purchase. Want to buy it again? Right? Not just buy. That doesn't work like that. But it has happened before. So every action should produce a visible, understandable, immediate reaction. This is the same things I repeated earlier, except the example was the buy button. Another feedback example. Error preventing is the best. Error handling, complement, don't complicate. Error messages should read, describe what happened, explain why it happened, suggest a fix, never blame the user. This is if something, let's say a computer crashes or a website goes down or something. You can use humor to tell people, hey, the mice ate the hard drives. We'll be back. We're working on it. Because if you see a blank screen, nothing worse than seeing a blank screen. then the user doesn't know what to expect, what to think. But if you give a message of telling them what's happening, they'll understand, right? Look at Twitter. Twitter uses humor too. Down, bear with us, right? Error prevent. Again, look what they did now to make it more fun. With Twitter, when it was called Twitter, they made the little birds because they're over capacity. It's overworked. They're carrying a whale, so they're quite burdened by their by their tasks. So they had to describe to people, hey, bear with us. We're overwhelmed. Please come back later. Our system is over capacity. So they have to use a visual diagram to communicate with their audience to tell them that, right? So instead of this, you can do something like this. It's more creative, a little more, I guess, appealing. So the 5 principles are all interrelated. Consistency helps people use what they know. Visibility of opportunity can invite interaction. Learning is easier when predictions are accurate. And feedback facilitates learning. These are all connected. All the things I talked about right now, but they're all connected with one another, okay? So when you're designing these products and stuff, always keep these things in mind because they're very important. So remember, these are the marching orders. You're not designing for yourself. Understand the goals and needs you're designing for. Think hard about the design and the experience. Set the user's expectations for the experience. Don't hinder, obstruct, or interfere with the experience. Like the example was left-handed, right-handed people moving your thumb over your screen to click on a menu. That shouldn't happen. You got to find a solution for that if that's the case. Try to break what you build. Be your own worst visitor. My brother used to do that. I used to break everything we had. These little toys and stuff. We just break it and put it apart together. Guess what he ended up being? He was a good mechanic. He used to repair cars, motorcycles, trucks, right? Because as a kid, he broke something, put it back together. Me, I wasn't much of a mechanic, but it was fun, interesting. I just didn't want to break anything. Why did you break it? We had the big fights about breaking stuff. But you put it back together. Maybe not the same way. Again, you're not designing for yourself. Information architecture. Let's say you're setting up a big system for a bank, a corporation, a huge information architecture. Without something like this, you can't do it. You have to have a plan. You have to have a system in place. So this might be, I don't know, let's say the government of, I don't know, Revenue Canada or something, or maybe a Royal Bank or another popular corporation or Fortune 500 company with a high level of information of data. You have to organize it, okay? So these are some of the things you're gonna probably be part of. Organize, categorize, and prioritize. Information architecture is the creation of organization and navigational schemes. A good information architecture allows to move through content efficiently and effectively. It's about more than just finding content. It's also about educating, informing, and persuading, often in equal doses. An effective IA is flexible, accommodating, growth, and adapting to change. Here's another hierarchical tree. This is a standard structure with an index page and a series of sub-pages. It's a good for organizing complicated structures that resemble desktop website. Again, something you did last semester, like your band website and stuff, it could have fallen into this category. Multifaceted navigation. Structures can present a problem for people using small screens. So most websites kind of follow this trend. This is called the hub and spoke diagram. This is more like a mobile device setup example. This gives users a central index. Central index means the page is in the middle. It's a central index, a hub. They'll navigate out from there. Users can't navigate between spokes. They have to return to the hub and then go to the next one. Good for multifunctional tools within an app, each with its own internal navigation and purpose. So some sites purposely, apps do this. Go here, right? Let's say to your contacts, right? You go to your contacts on your phone, and then you go back to the main contacts list. But you click to the contacts, and you go back to contacts. Get it? Because that could kind of work. You can't go from contacts to the email, right? It doesn't work. You have to go back and forward. So it's structural. Okay. So sometimes you have to do this. Maybe it's a recipe for like some kind of a cooking website or something, or an app. So this is intentionally done. Nested list. You go next, 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 like a linear diagram, which we covered earlier. This is called the linear paths to more detailed content. This is the bento box dashboard. Okay. This pattern is suited more for desktop or tablet due to its complexity. From this one, you can kind of go to different areas and you can get key information at a glance. I guess even Spotify, iTunes could be kind of relatable to this way, right? Where's the one that can go anywhere and everywhere? So you could kind of navigate to different areas from this one too. Filtered view, again, I'll use the Spotify example because you can then filter results by genre, music, what categories you're looking for. Netflix has a similar setup like this because with Netflix you can pick, what's trending now, top 10 movies or shows or whatever. So it's filtered. You can filter your view, your interface to what you're looking for. So this pattern allows the user to filter content in order to create an alternate view of a specific information set. Good for app sites with high volume of content. So if you have like a lot of content, you need a filter because no one's going to go next, next, next. They're going to hit drama and see 100 movies that deal with drama, right? Getting to know nodes. A node is a basic unit. We used to call nodes anchor points in Illustrator. Did you guys use CorelDRAW before? Anybody use CorelDRAW? Okay, CorelDRAW, right? I used to use CorelDRAW back in the day. It was a standard here in Canada too. Now it's no longer used. I mean, it's still an application, but they don't use it in North America anymore. So those little things that you see in Illustrator, the anchor points, when you create an anchor point with the pen tool, well, they used to be called nodes. But see, nodes mean something else here now. So it's a different definition of a node. A node is a basic unit of any information structure. A node can be as small as a single number or as large as an entire library. Nodes allow us to use a common language and a common set of ideas across different problems. With the organizing principles we use to determine how the node of an information structure are arranged. In other words, it tells us which nodes are grouped together and which are kept separate. So that's just the term they use. And this is another organizing principle example. Corporate website. What's the organizing principle example of a corporate website? It's right there. The audience. My dental business directory that I've built, right? Guess what? My organizing principle is also the audience. Because if you're looking for, let's go to my dental business directory. There it is, right? What am I looking for? A dentist, a denturist, a hygienist, maybe an orthodontist. Maybe I'm looking for a supplier or a specialty, or I want to join. So I have a different audience that I'm looking for to find on my website platform. Okay. So this is what I built like probably almost 10 years ago now, but it's my little pet project that I have. So my principle here was organizing principle was the audience. Okay. How about a travel website? By the way, I do have a geographical filter as well to show you. But a travel website, what kind of organizational principle is the travel website? Like Expedia. What do you think is their main organizational structure? It's not the audience. What is it? Sorry? Geography. But you're right. It could be like, I want to fly with this airline or that airline, right? But geography is where do you want to go, right? If you're traveling somewhere, the first thing you should say is, where am I going? Then you get to choose what airline, what kind of method you want to travel and all the details. But geography is the principle for traveling websites. This is just a categorical explanation. Now, I got to brag about my website again. Of course, you guys asked for it. So look at this. You ready? I'm looking for a dentist, right? look, I got this card view. I also have a map view. So yes, we can actually go ahead and use a map view. There we go, right? So you have a map view. This is a geographical view. You can click on the thing, and you can actually go to view. So you could use that by location. You can search by location too. So if you have the option to use both, you can. But most likely, if you're not doing directories like me, like the boring stuff, you can do more like a strategic grouping of organizing principles. The rules of thumb is this. The organizing principles used are to the highest levels of the site app should be those most closely tied to the user needs and the business objectives. Those used at lower levels are usually influenced by feature specs, content requirements. Every collection of information has a built-in conceptual structure, and in most cases, it has more than one. The hard part isn't creating a structure, it's creating the right structure for our objectives and our user needs. Just going to get to the fast part here. So these are the rules of thumb. This was an old school back in the day organizing structure. Have you guys went to the library 30 years ago? Do you remember what happened? Did you have a computer? Right? I don't think we had a computer where I came, but we went to the library. Even now, some books, old encyclopedias, this is how they're organizing their structure, right? So you have the markets, and you have the different 1.1, 1.2, 1.11, 1.2, 1.3. It's the decimals, how they structured information, organizing the information from a contextual view. Okay, so it's content. Methods vary based on the complexity of what's being produced. For projects with a high volume of content, hierarchical structure, text outlines are often enough to document. Even now with the Microsoft Word, people use bullet points on emails. You kind of do your indents, organize your priority of your message. The visual vocabulary, again, this is the popular one by Jesse James Garrett, the system for diagramming structures. It's just an example of a common structure that's being used for most maps. This is one that's used for most systems. This is a very common one, actually. Because if you look at it closely, this is the Humber uses the same system. What do? Log in. Can't log in? Success. Log in. Then you go to the website, right? What happens if you can't log in? You go back to the login page. It says the wrong password. Reset your password. Do something else. So this system is the most popular system pretty much all around us. Your email, clients, everything uses this yes and no login, yes or no success system, right? Then you get to the other points. Hub and spoke diagrams. These are also kind of more visual, more creative. There's a zoom in view of that. This is good for timelines. You're doing like a history, biography or something like that. You can raise different important levels. Okay? You've seen these, the more complex ones. I'm getting to the end now, okay? It's almost done. Good structure organizes information in a way that provides intuitive access to content. Structure is created by interaction design. Interaction design makes these things work, which means presenting information in a way people can understand and interact with. It's nothing, doesn't make sense if people don't know how to use it, okay? So make sure your job as a designer is to make something complex, make simple. That's why Apple is very successful at that. The phone is very complex, but anyone can use it. Like kids of all ages, elderly people. There's just one button, click. Even the original Apple mouse only had one button. There was no right click on the Apple mouse. The only way to get a right click was to hold Control, and then you click to initiate a right click function. Windows had a right click. Windows had three buttons with 3 clicks. A three clicking mouse. Remember that one? A triple click. So then Apple finally gave in and made a right click because they're like, we can't be that special anymore, right? People need a right click on their mouse, right? We all need a right click. I don't know if you remember the old campus. Were you guys ever in the other campus? The North Campus. Were you there, ever there? There's computers there that the students used. But initially, the mouse is very basic, doesn't have a right click. You have to activate it from the settings. Literally, I had to take my students through the system settings and go to the mouse. Yeah, because they're like, my mouse is not working, sir. My mouse is broken. No, it's not. You have to basically go over here. You have to activate a secondary button. Yes. Otherwise, by default, both buttons acted as a primary button. So you can right click or left click, it does the same click. But the right click wasn't working until you basically set it up to be such a thing. It was annoying, but we had to do it every morning because the systems there, when you restart them, they reset for security purposes. So yeah, that was the thing we had to do with this stuff. All right, so that's it. That was enough for that. So that we covered the structure. We got the two more modules to cover with this UX stuff, and now we're going to get into the more practical side as well. So today, like I said, I promised you we'll start with XD. I want to introduce you to the software. We'll take a break first, and then we'll start in about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. We'll continue the second half. And then maybe we'll do 15 minutes, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and open this up here, pause my recording, and we'll continue when we come back.